New Aphotic Realm announcement. Submission windows for upcoming issues. Issue 10, the theme is Justice. That's hard-boiled fiction with a supernatural twist. The deadline for that will be April 1st, 2020. Issue 11, the theme is Kaiju, giant monsters terrorizing civilization. Deadline will be October 1st, 2020 for those stories. Issue 12, the theme is Lycanthropy, which is, of course, self-explanatory. It can be any type of animorph with a bloody twist. So I guess that's werewolves and giant, I don't know. What do people turn into? Seals? I've just got a little seal on my desk, so I thought of that. I don't know. You'll have to be more imaginative than I just was. But the deadline for Lycanthropy, January 1st, 2021. Good luck to everyone submitting.
This thing, I hope you like it. Let's talk about it, yeah. Let's lose track. Losing the Plot Podcast. Losing the Plot Podcast. Losing the Plot Podcast. Talking to Leo X.
So my guest this episode is Danger Slater. We're going to be talking about the films of Harmony Korine, specifically Spring Breakers and The Beach Bum. So what happened was, as you probably know, I'm looking more into film and learning about that, so I've been watching loads of different films. I watched The Beach Bum, the Harmony Korine film, recently, and I thought it was great, and I knew that Danger Slater was a fan of Korine's and had seen the film, so I got in touch with him because I really wanted to discuss it with somebody. And then we had a great little chat about that over Messenger. And then I thought, hey, why don't you come on the show and we'll talk about the films of Harmony Korine. And so that's what we did. There will be spoilers for these films, so do check them out first if you want to join in. Of course, I do recommend them, both Spring Breakers and The Beach Bum in particular, like two of the best films in recent years, in my opinion. And you know, if you like this, we had a great time chatting about it. It seems like something that we could keep doing with different directors. We start to mention different people that came up in the chat. It was great. I hope you enjoy this. If you want to be on the show, if you want to tell me anything about it, you can get in touch with me using losingtheplotpodcast-at-gmail.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. But that's enough for me. Here is my chat with Danger Slater about the films of Harmony Korine. I can't believe you're so early awake on a Sunday.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't really have a 9 to 5 situation, so I kind of work every day. So it's okay. I just get up and do my normal day. But like a weekend doesn't really necessarily matter, is what I'm getting at.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah, like Sunday's not my sleeping day.
Okay. I had to think about the fact that it was Sunday there for a second as well. I was like, so early on a Sunday? Yeah.
On a day of the week? Count. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm in, I think last time I talked I was on that little island called Stord in Norway.
Yeah.
Like last year. Now I'm back in Stavanger, which is where I started. It's a city. I'm in my actual home. Got a home office where I work, which is cool. Don't have to talk to anyone.
Have you been stuck inside for a minute, or you guys got going into the office, or how's that working out there?
Yeah, no, I think now like they're opening stuff up again here, but it's only like essential staff. It's like a quarter of people who can normally go into the office, so I just stay home. Everyone wants to Skype now as well. Has that happened to you? Everyone's in touch all the time, feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking on the phone and on Skype a lot more often than I did before, which was almost never. Like, I'm assuming you only do it or only did it for the podcast most of the time, or maybe to your family and stuff. But yeah, I've been talking to a lot of friends and stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. But you're like an essential worker. You're out in a van most days, is that right?
Well, I'm a gig worker, so I am not an actual employee of anywhere. I kind of just do like Ubering for Amazon
Hmm.
but lately I've been doing it for a company called DoorDash, which is just food, from restaurants and stuff because Amazon has been a little hectic with all this stuff going on, and they have all these regulations in place of like how to get workers in and out safely, and it just takes a lot longer. But they don't
Hmm.
pay any extra. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna like let that be and just focus on maybe doing some restaurant deliveries for the next couple months. And it's been pretty good. People have been tipping and stuff pretty well, and uh, that's where most of the money comes from because those apps don't pay you much either. But yeah, I am kind of exempt from, I guess, any of those stay-at-home orders when I'm working.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it's actually a lot. I hate to say this. It's actually a lot nicer because there's no cars on the road, and I could like get places very easily. And I'm making money a lot easier and quicker than I normally am. And I'm just like, this is actually working out pretty good. As long as I don't get sick or anyone I know that doesn't get sick, this hasn't been much of a problem for me.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I'm like, how can I express my excitement at this news situation without sounding insensitive? I don't know.
Well, I'm hoping it's like a paradigm shift or something. Like those people just realize, like, oh, maybe we don't all need to like be doing all this stuff at all the time, and we can actually take more time to sit around and relax, and still get all of our work done.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, like, what's it for if not what I'm doing now, which is just like getting to hang out around my house, like with my new cat and just, you know, be closer to loved ones and friends, like
Yeah.
more often. That's the whole point of why I left this place was so I could get back to it as often as possible to
Right.
secure its like existence. So yeah. Oh my god, the Mr. Burns tattoo! I'd not seen that one.
Oh,
What prompted that one?
um, that's a good question, but I mean, I was, when I was gonna get a tattoo, I wanted to get something that would be not huge, so something affordable. So this is kind of
Yeah.
small, and I was thinking of the things that I like. And The Simpsons is one, and this is specifically from the X Files episode of The Simpsons. So it's kind of like a twofer of things that I was into when I was, growing up,
Mhm.
and it's just weird also. So people have been like, "What the hell? Is that Mr. Burns?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Nice. Kind of with each new tattoo, like the the scope of like what it means gets lower, doesn't it? Kind of.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. The first one you're like, it's gonna be perfect. And by like the fifth or sixth, or I mean, I have like maybe 12 or something now. I'm just like, what's the funniest thing that I could get at this point?
That's great.
Yeah,
The last one I got you saw was the big cat with the red bow. And he says you've got a lucky face.
this bit.
Nice.
Oh wait, I can't even bend my arm. Yeah, I have my arm right next to it. Little, a little cat devil.
Yeah. But mine was just to try and convince me not to take life so seriously. I don't know if it worked because I'm such an intensely serious person. So I don't know. And it's a ridiculous thing to be a serious person, you know.
Yeah, it's so funny too because like I think of my writing and the stuff that I'm into, and it's all very silly. There is like this kind of unreality or silliness that kind of flows through all of it, but at the same time, when I sit down to actually work on it, I'm like so serious about what I'm doing, and I'm like so hyper focused, and I'm like, none of this is a joke. This is
Mm.
art, But like, meanwhile, I'm writing about like monsters with like, things coming out of their eyeballs and tentacles and all this other nonsense. It's like the least dire thing in the world. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I think that's kind of part of that artist spirit where you kind of, even if you're making something that's funny or goofy or just weird, you still have to be serious about it as an artist.
Hmm.
By the way, comedians are all depressed.
I was just about to say, it's so funny. Like it's when you first start watching interviews with comedians, you're like, yeah, really funny people, and then they're just like, I went to therapy, and like this is to understand that I don't know, Richard Pryor was a galvanizing of his time, and you're like, my God, these people are so intense. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, tell some jokes.
Or like, or even like Will Ferrell or something, who I mean, I don't know if he's depressed or not, but anytime I've ever seen him be interviewed, he's just like the most boring, normal person you could possibly imagine. He's just like, yeah, well,
Mhm.
I was doing this movie. But like, meanwhile, his characters are all gigantic and strange, and he's like saying the funniest things you could think of or most random things. And
Mm.
it's just like, yeah, it's just that performer mindset where I guess you switch into a different mode of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what we want when we look into like interviews with famous people as well. It's like, please tell me that you have days that suck. I want to know that
Yeah.
everyone does, um, so yeah. But we
Yeah.
all do. Yeah. So it seems like, I mean, I knew that Harmony Korine was like one of your favorites because I saw you posting about Spring Breakers. It seems like he's that mix of serious and silly that we were talking about as well, right?
Yeah. When I watch those movies or his movies, it's hard to even put a pin in what exactly he's trying to do. Like, I don't know
Hmm.
if he's trying to be super sincere or if he's trying to be kind of ironic or trying to be kind of just weird for the sake of being weird, or if he actually has these profound things to say. And I think that's a lot of what makes those movies so interesting, is that you can kind of extrapolate in any direction and apply your own meaning to them. And that's kind of why I keep returning to them too and watching them again. Like Spring Breakers, I've watched 6 times now, which is a lot for a essentially plotless movie, about girls just partying.
Hmm.
But there is so much to be kind of seen there, and even now, because I watched it again, what, 2 weeks ago or last week for this podcast, I'm still picking up on things I had never realized before. And it could just be
Yeah.
maybe I was mentally, and now the movie, I can map myself onto the movie, or maybe that was his intention. It kind of leaves it ambiguous for people, and I think that's what makes
Hmm.
them good.
Yeah. It's a far more like densely meaningful film than I had noticed because I also rewatched it for this. And I just think it must have been so improperly marketed because I think that like the whole opening sequence I think is just couldn't be more like basic Girls Gone Wild MTV imagery. And so I
Yeah.
think in the trailer they must have sold it to that audience when in fact somehow, I'm wondering if you agree with this, like that opening imagery is being held at a distance. It's not like being shown for the same reasons it's shown on MTV. It's not supposed to be like titillating and exciting. It's like the colors are too bright, the images are too close. You're somehow held at a distance from it, as if like in this film we are going to be objectively analyzing this culture. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. Well, and if you kind of think of where the girls start in the movie, they're in this kind of like drab college town. It's kind of like always dark. It, it's showing where they are. It's like they're either in dim lit
Yeah.
nighttime or they're in a dim lit classroom. And to me, at least on this last watch, it seemed like they were looking at the spring break as kind of like a religious person would look towards Mecca or some sort of idealized version of what they want out of the world. So they're like, because it's their only driving force in the movie is, we need to get to this party, and then we need to stay at the party. Like, that's all that they want. They just don't want the party to ever end, essentially.
It's most definitely like a religious experience for them. Yeah. Because you've got this character called Faith, who's like in this group of, I don't know, God group. I've never been to one. I don't know how you call it or what they're doing. But then they're all singing together, and then she's the first to go. Like, it's like Faith literally leaves spring break. There's no faith here anymore. The faith is, drugs and money and being young forever and having a great time.
Yeah, and the kind of way I was reading it too is like, if we're following that track of like, this is a religious pilgrimage for these girls, at some point it turns from just a pilgrimage into basically zealotry, where the girl Faith, who was the least on board for what was going on, is the first to leave. She kind of dips out at the moment where things are about to go south, right? They meet Alien, who could be construed as a cult figure, like a religious type leader. He kind of ushers them into this other side of Florida, or the spring break world, or whatever. And eventually the movie tracks them as he converts them into the most faithful of his followers, until they are more faithful to this lifestyle than even he is. Because they get to walk away at the end, and he does not.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's definitely like the embodiment of everything that they worship. He's got these like metal teeth and the guns, and it's just way too much and all there, and he's loud and saying, "Look at my shit," and all this stuff. Definitely.
It's funny though, because we're talking about like the kind of like symbolism, I guess, or the more serious aspects of this. It's all played very over the top and kind of cartoonish. Like that scene where he's talking about all his stuff. He's, look at my shit, look at my shorts, I got Scarface on, I got nunchucks. Like, it's
Scarface.
So ridiculous. It's like a 1, 2, 3 scene, because it's like it goes that scene, and then basically the scene where he starts filleting a gun in the bed with the girls, and then they start singing Britney Spears while like robbing spring breakers and stuff. It's just so surreal and so over the top. And I guess the way it's presented is in this kind of dreamy aspect. Like, nothing ever feels concrete. Like, there's not like scene A, scene B, scene C. They all just kind of blend in to each other.
That's true.
And I wonder if it's supposed to be like, oh, we're kind of experiencing this the way someone in a drug-induced haze would experience it, or if he's trying to say, we're not dealing with actual reality, we are in kind of dream logic here, so you need to follow this in a more what's the word I'm looking for, like metaphorical or symbolic way. The thing, they're not really, if they were going around robbing people at spring break, they would get caught. Like, something would stop them at some point, but that's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie is, how far does it go?
Yeah, that's very true. I noticed something also second time. I did want to ask you also, because I know that it's the same in The Beach Bum, definitely, this lack of concrete drug-induced haze style, which I think is achieved. I can't really remember like if there are establishing shots or something, but yeah, you're not really given much time to adjust to what's happening. And lots of like voiceover is used to stitch various scenes together. But also I noticed that like there's 2 times that people are singing. Or no, I mean there's various times that people are singing, but before they go to Florida, they're singing in the church, and then when they go to Florida, they're singing the Britney Spears song, which is like their, I don't know, religious choir, I think. Worship of pop music.
that hadn't occurred to me, but that actually tracks kind of what I was saying before. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, something between both of these films is that they both contain a former member of High School Musical in their cast, which I think is quite deliberate. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Because those guys or those people are associated with Disney, and then they're
mhm,
really subverting, I guess, what their image was by playing essentially horrible people. Zac Efron was pretty horrible in that. Even though he's only got one scene basically in The Beach Bum, he's not
mhm.
really quite likable. He's memorable but not likable.
Yeah, that was my favorite. Just every moment he was in that film was my favorite part of the whole thing. His character is absolutely ridiculous, over the top, and he's just like, "Yeah, we're in a Christian rock cover band," and then like twice for no reason he says like the best thing about Christianity is like Jesus died for your sins, so you can do anything and you go to heaven. And it's like, I don't think that's how it works. And then he says it again.
Yeah. Right before hitting an old man in a wheelchair on the head with a glass bottle to steal
Yeah.
wallet.
And the thing about like we can jump about as much as you want. I mean, it's losing the plot, so there's nobody should expect structure here. But I didn't want to start with the films that I know are your favorites. But yeah, that film is like so funny that you're distracted from how disturbing its ideas are.
Yeah, yeah. See, I kind of was thinking of The Beach Bum and Spring Breakers of a piece too, because they both have the same look. They're both very, like we were saying before, kind of dreamy in the way they're constructed. They're both very bright and colorful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Harmony Korine loves a good shot of the sunset. There's so many scenes in both movies where the characters are standing on a beach and the sun is literally setting behind them as they deliver their lines or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They both take place in Florida, obviously. Uh, and I think they both share a similar philosophy, but kind of go at it from two opposite directions. Because Moondog in The Beach Bum, his whole philosophy too is how can I keep the party going?
Mm-hmm.
Like same as the girls in Spring Breakers. They just don't want the good times or whatever they associate with the good times to end. And they are
Mm-hmm.
going to go about this however they can, and while the girls in Spring Breakers are kind of like, I'm going to force this situation, this we're going to rob and steal and do whatever we can to keep this going. Moondog is more almost like the Buddha or something. He's just like, I'm going to sit here and let everything happen to me, and instead of trying to control situations, I'm always going to go with what's happening, and the universe is going to reward me for this.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
he's not, Moondog isn't a bad person. He's, in fact, everybody loves him, but like he watches like Zac Efron smash a bottle on a guy's head, or there's a scene where he's talking to Jonah Hill's character towards the end of the movie, and Jonah Hill's character is like, the best part about being rich is I can do whatever I want, or something like that. And Moondog never judges these people in his life for essentially not being good people.
Mm.
And he doesn't cut them out of his life either. But I don't think he subscribes to the same philosophy as any of them. Like,
Yeah.
even though
That
he's
is.
also doing what he wants, he's not trying to do harm to people.
Yes, and it's like, yeah, you see both aspects of that. It's good and it's bad. Like the part that really stuck out for me is when Snoop Dogg is like, oh, I was cheating on, like, your wife was cheating on you with me, and he's just like, yeah, like, it's cool, it's whatever. It's like, it's so interesting that you do, like, there's something, as you said, it's kind of nihilistic, the idea that, yeah, okay, if you can choose however on earth you want to react to any situation. It's like, it's awful. It almost makes anything meaningless, but it also has good aspects in that somebody can tell you something that's supposed to fly you into rage and end your friendship with them. And you can just be like, yeah, whatever, like, if you really want.
Yeah.
But also being that laid back to your circumstances. you would have to be Moondog in order for it to work out all the time, because the universe does seem to conspire to
Happy.
to let to let him to be happy. But also at the same time, it's revealing how farcical that notion must be in real life, that can't be true of anyone. Because if it was true of someone, it would look like what happens to Moondog, and that doesn't happen to anyone. So
in the movie, I think kind of pushes it into that territory too, where you're like, this isn't actual real life. It's more about the ideas, because the last two scenes of the movie is him winning the Pulitzer Prize for his ridiculous poetry, and then and then getting $50 million, which he proceeds to explode and just laugh.
yeah.
So like, there's no, all the rewards don't really mean anything to him. At the same time as he's also getting all of it too. And there is something about that movie, especially with that scene where he wins the the Pulitzer Prize, because, and I think this is the greatest trick the movie plays, because his poetry is, I'm gonna say, not very good. It's kind of silly, but for some reason everyone in this world loves it. Everyone connects with it. They all love him. And he reads it. He goes to in the very first scene of the movie, he just goes to some show where someone's playing music, and he jumps on stage, interrupts the show to recite this poem about having sex, essentially. And he's like, I'm looking at my dick while I'm peeing and thinking about sex. And you're just like, what the hell is this? But then at the end of the movie, he reads the same poem at the Pulitzer Prize ceremony, and it's intercut with scenes of his dead wife, and you understand the journey he actually went through emotionally to write this ridiculous poem. And it is, I found, to be actually very emotionally affecting. So in that moment, I was like on the verge of crying, because I'm like, oh, this man had to go through so much just to come to terms with this person he loved passing. And that's what his terrible poem was actually about in the beginning. And while we laughed at it before, even though it's I guess still technically funny, because he's just talking about peeing in his dick and stuff, but while we laughed at it before, I'm like, there's actually a lot to what he says, because now you can see everything that is behind it. And it's a very clever trick that the movie plays to manipulate you emotionally to get to that point without ever making it seem like it was trying to do that.
Yeah, very well put. Yeah,
that's kind of what I think is I like about these movies too, is they feel very sincere, and they don't feel like they are trying to be manipulative or trying to tell you how to feel. They're merely presenting you with a series of scenes, I guess, that you can kind of take from it what you will, almost like poems themselves.
Yes, definitely, yeah. I think that's what attracts me to Harmony Korine as a filmmaker, is like, rather than some people who their messages could work in any medium, he's somebody who is like a filmmaker. He's not writing stories that are being turned into films. He's making films, which is that, like, it's the intersection of what people are saying and how they look like, and what you're seeing in the background. It's the images themselves are the message. If it could be expressed in any other way, it would be expressed in any other way. But what you're supposed to take in is just the feeling that the films give you upon watching them,
I like that. I think I don't think a lot of filmmakers kind of think of movies that way. Like, they're, especially the kind of stuff that's popular. Yeah, yes, there's absolutely movies out there that are like, it's all about like the visual language, like Mandy or something. I don't know if you watched that last year.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So like, there's almost no dialogue in that movie. It's just like, let's give you an experience that can only be experienced through watching it. But like, especially with these Harmony Korine movies too, every shot is beautiful. Every shot is kind of saying something in a way, and the dialogue is almost the least important part of these movies. I was watching both of them, and I was even wondering if there was a script. Like, I'm like, I don't think that there's actual dialogue written on a page that they're like, you need to recite this. Like that, like James Franco talking about, look at my shit. I think he was just like, this is what you need to do. You need to brag about all your stuff. Just keep saying, look at my shit, and just start calling out things in the room, and just like feel it, be in the moment, and just feel it. Like, and I don't know
Hmm.
if that's actually what happened, but that's how it comes across as a viewer. I'm like, this is a real moment in this ridiculous man's life.
Yeah, I have so much respect for Matthew McConaughey after seeing him in that film. Like, that's one of the best performances I've ever seen, I think. In like, he could do anything he wants at this stage. He chose to do that film, like, knowing that I guess people would be attracted to see him in it. And then he does that, which is like almost a parody of himself.
Yeah, yeah. It was some great casting, especially when you look at a lot of people in the Beach Bum were kind of playing themselves. Like Jimmy
Hmm.
Buffett was there playing himself. Snoop Dogg was playing a character that is essentially just Snoop Dogg. Like, it's just a rapper who loves weed. Like, that's his character. Okay. Like, and I think, especially if you look at some of the older Harmony Korine movies too, where like Gummo or something, you're like, these aren't even actors in this movie. You're like, who are they?
Hmm.
They just seem like, I mean, I guess they are actors, but they just seem like random people that he found on the street, or something. And
Yeah.
you want to be in a film?
Yeah, Gummo is like a whole movie, I think. What I find very strange, like about that one, is it's set in Nashville, Tennessee, which is where Harmony Korine grew up. They say it's in Ohio for some reason. Um, and yeah, no, those people. I remember like I think, was his name Tumblr or something? The character, I can't remember his name, but he was on a Sally Jesse Raphael episode called "My Child Died from Sniffing Paint" because he was a paint sniffing survivor. And Harmony Korine was like, "Yeah, I want that guy in my film." Um, and then
Is
there
that
was another guy.
really how he cast them?
Yeah, that's where he came
That's
up with it.
fucked
So,
up.
but that's how I noticed that his casting of like where people are from is also a deliberate part of the message itself. Like the High School Musical casting of those people, and his wife as well is in Spring Breakers, right? I think
Yeah.
um everything he does is very much like a self-portrait, and I think like I listened to an interview with him and he says when he was younger he like had to have everything right now and wanted the fun to last forever. So I think that that's why that film, why you say it's so sincere, is because he is asking you to examine that culture critically, but he's not outright condemning it because it was him at one stage in his life, and there is something very beautiful about it, which is also displayed in both those films, both Beach Bum and Spring Breakers. Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes, I'm like, I can't believe this guy's basically my age too, to be like this, because he's not that much older than me. I'm like 37 right now. So, and he was, I guess his first movie was Kids. He wrote Kids. He didn't direct it, but I think he was 18 or something when he wrote that, and I was maybe like 14 when that movie came out. So he's like a few years older than me, and he's been doing this for 20 years. And I'm like, this guy has got such like idiosyncratic and singular grasp on what it means to be a filmmaker, and he's
Mhm.
still this early in his career. Like there's still so much. Like if he's gonna be, if he goes like Martin Scorsese, he's gonna have another 30 years of movie making behind him, or ahead of him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't. I'm like, I'm just kind of excited to see where it goes, especially how you're saying these films are autobiographical in a lot of ways. And I know the Beach Bum didn't perform in the theaters nearly as well as they were probably hoping it did. Um,
Yeah.
so that I personally don't think the movie itself is a failure. I think the movie's a masterpiece, but it was a commercial failure, let's say. So
Hmm.
that might kind of affect what he's able to do next, and that kind of mindset might actually bleed into whatever his next project may be. Because I
Yeah.
can't, if he's not making money at a box office, you might not get another movie with that kind of cast, with Matthew McConaughey and Jonah Hill and Martin Lawrence and all these famous stars in it,
Mhm.
and this giant budget where they're shooting in mansions and all over Florida and stuff. There's explosions, and so yeah, I mean, you might go back to like a Trash Humpers or something, or something that's just shot basically on a cell phone or with his friends.
Yeah, definitely. Have you seen the film Slacker by Richard Linklater?
No, I haven't.
Okay,
I'm
it's just
familiar with it.
it reminded me, like, stylistically, it reminded me of early Harmony Korine films. But what I like about that one and Korine's work as well, it's like in Trash Humpers and in Beach Bum and everything, he's just like, I don't really fit into the world. I don't really understand what everyone's doing, but it's sort of over there, and it's really brave and kind of scary to admit that. But I think that's also what resonates with me, is like, I don't really understand what most people are talking about or what they're interested in. Um, so I don't know. I think he's definitely an outsider. I think that's obvious. But did you manage to see Trash Humpers?
I have not, because I wanted to. It was not streaming anywhere, and we had
Mhm.
like a week and a half to try and like catch up on all these movies, so I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. But I think there's bits of dialogue that reminded me of Beach Bum, because towards the end they're just like, I don't go to church, like I don't take out my trash in the morning, like I don't really live like other people. Um,
You know,
so
there's
yeah, I think.
there's kind of different filmmakers I think kind of do the same thing as Corinne, and like you just said, Linkletter, and I never thought of it, but he's probably one of the closest people doing the same kind of stuff, except he's got a little more, I'd say, commercial viability, and it might just be because he does certain projects that also are like studio projects, like School of Rock or something.
Yeah.
But like the movie, I don't know if you've ever seen Bernie. He did with Jack Black, and
Heard of it,
it's
but
like
no, I've not seen it.
Matthew McConaughey's actually in that one too. But it's kind of like a true crime story with reenactments with these famous actors in it, but then interviews with the real people who were part of this famous crime. And it
Okay.
is, I don't know what it is about the movie. I've watched it 4 times. Like, it's just this most enthralling movie. Jack Black is probably one of his best performances, but it is another movie where it's not constructed like other films. It's not constructed like a documentary. It's not constructed like a narrative film. It's its own thing, and
Hmm.
it's the kind of vision that this this director like Linklater only could make. I mean, even his most popular movie, Dazed and Confused, doesn't have a plot. like it's essentially a commercial version, or maybe we consider it commercial because it was so successful, but it is essentially an experimental film. He's just like, I'm going to show you 50 characters at high school in the 70s, and that's it. They're like,
Oh
he's like,
right, okay.
they all have their own little things they want to do, but really they all just want to go to this party, and that's it, because it's the last day of school.
Yeah, I'll need to see that one. I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds like an expansion of Slacker, which I think came before, which is like 10 different characters just giving like 10-minute monologues about a bunch of absolute nonsense that they're completely obsessed about, like JFK assassination theories and stuff. And it will just be like a film of them walking along the street for 10 minutes, going like, "Aliens are in the government."
Yeah, yeah.
um.
Well, he did
So
it. He
yeah.
did that with Waking Life, I believe, too. Is kind of that
Okay.
extension. Except they did that. I think it's called rotoscoping, where they do animation over the film. So he
Hmm.
filmed these people essentially just kind of talking and doing that. The aliens are real. Like, I think Alex Jones was even in it before he was who he
Oh,
is now.
nice. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he just like they just colored over it, so it makes it even more dreamy and unreal, because now, even though you're watching a real performance from real footage, it's been colored and changed and messed with to this point where now it doesn't look like a cartoon and it doesn't look like a film. It's just this weird thing that is existing and you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which they also did for a Scanner Darkly, which I've not seen because I keep meaning to read the book and then I don't.
That's a great one. That one has a little more of a plot than some of these others because it is following a
A book,
book.
yeah. Have you seen Boyhood?
No, my friend told me was like one of the best movies he's ever seen, and I have not gotten a chance to check it out.
It's so
I'm
good.
like,
I think it's yeah. Tell me.
yeah, no, I just every time because it pops up on like Netflix or something, and it's like you might like this, and every time I'm just like I don't know if I want to. I'm like, this is gonna be so sad. It's probably like 3 hours long, and I don't know if I want to do this right now. And every time I've had the opportunity, I'm like, I'm gonna put on something else.
Yeah, it's true. I think like if you did get started in it, it doesn't feel like 3 hours. Like all the best films feel like they're supposed to be the length they are, right? And um, so that one you barely notice it, and it would be interesting. I think there's similar techniques in that one. I would say to again Beach Bum and Spring Breakers, which is like just scenes just kind of happen. So like over 12 years, this kid grows up, and you don't even. But they don't say now he's 4, now he's 5. It's just like he's in this scene, he's in that scene, and suddenly years are passed, and it all kind of makes sense, but it doesn't, which is how it feels to experience time rather than to have a linear plot.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, I would. I'm intending to check it out. It's like Linklater especially has like I don't know. He makes a movie every year or like every other year. He's got a lot of films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Todd Solondz as well seems like another one who's in the Korine boat of like ultra dedicated filmmaker. He was in like I listened to his Mark Maron interview and he was like, I don't even know why they let me put my name on the poster anymore. Like it's not a selling point because films don't make money, but he funds them himself. And somebody was like, why'd you do that? And he said, what am I going to do? Get a bigger apartment. Which I thought was great.
I love Todd Solondz. I've been on Todd Solondz for pretty much his whole career because he is from New Jersey, which is where I grew up. And not only that, but my dad worked in a town called Livingston, which is where he's from. So he was like the big celebrity from that town. We have a filmmaker. The movie was Happiness, of course. So I don't know how
He'll make you hate life. Yeah.
But my dad, when I was a teenager, he's just like, oh, there's this crazy filmmaker that lives in town. And he knew I was getting into movies and stuff. So he was showing me these movies when I was little or at least a teenager. And yeah, Todd Solondz is also one of my favorites. And I think he's maybe a little more cynical than Harmony Korine.
Definitely.
They're a little meaner and and his characters are a little uglier. But
I would say
I don't mean physically, but I mean like mentally ugly.
No, I would say he's even pessimistic, which is like, why even bother living? I think is sometimes the message of his films. It seems to me. Happiness maybe not. Happiness, I think, is cathartic because it's just like, I don't know, it is kind of a comedy. I love the bit where the woman's like, it's the two sisters and she's talking to Joy, who's in her kitchen. And Joy is like, oh yeah, no, I think I'm much happier now. And the kid comes in with a gun going like, bang, bang. And then she just starts crying. It's so, you're enjoying her misery, but you are enjoying it, I suppose. But some of his later films, it's just like, I don't know if you've seen Dark Horse.
I started to watch that one, but I wasn't feeling it, and I kind of turned that off.
Okay, yeah, fair. Because it's almost just like the message of it just seems to be, what a waste of space this guy is. Like, why did he even bother? Like, what an absolute failure of potential. And you're like, guess that can happen to some people. Oh well,
I think I found that main character so insufferable, and I just was not in the headspace to kind of deal with it. I was just like, oh, a Todd Solondz movie, and I put it on. I was like, I should have mentally prepared myself for what I was going to get into because it's usually not.
I think, yeah.
But there was a big theater in town called the Hollywood Theater. It's this giant 150-year-old theater in Portland where it's got a big screen, and we got to go see Welcome to the Dollhouse a couple years ago on the big screen, which with a packed audience, because they only play it one night, and anyone who wants to be there has to come that night. And it was really an interesting experience to watch something so uncomfortable with 200 other people, because there's moments where stuff that's being played for comedy is probably the most horrible, uncomfortable stuff you're gonna see in a movie. Like this girl is just getting shit on constantly, and then the bully is just keeps telling her he's gonna rape her, and like the audience is like, like they're just like chuckling and looking left and right. Like, are we supposed to be laughing at this? Because it's played for comedy, because it's so horrible and over the top the way the people are acting and treating this girl, and it's I can imagine Todd Solondz like in the back of the room on the when this movie premiere, just chuckling to himself at how uncomfortable everyone in the room is.
Well, I think like the good kind of thing that these directors do, Solondz and Korine in particular, is criticize like the American positive thinking. They're very American films. Maybe it's more apparent if you're outside of it, but like the very American attitudes. Like in Beach Bum, Moondog says like the universe is conspiring to keep me happy, which is very similar to, I don't know if you know that book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
No, not totally familiar.
Okay, there's a sentence in that which I think is like I've not read it. I just remember this quote and going, that's ridiculous. Is that why people like it? It says as soon as you want something, the universe conspires to get it for you. So I thought that when Moondog says it in the film, I was like, that's almost that's about as close to that sentence as you can get without, copyright infringement. And I think it's one of those books that managers of top Fortune 500 companies recommend all the time because it's how you're supposed to think. But then the film itself is criticizing that attitude. I think also like maybe you know more than me, but like in both Spring Breakers and The Beach Bum, there's definitely a lot being said about race as well. I don't know if you've seen that interview with Harmony Korine where he's talking about his book, A Crack Up at the Race Riots. And he says like, I've read the book, I can't remember if this is in it or not, but he claims in the Letterman interview that it's about a race riot between Vanilla Ice, who's head of all the white people, and MC Hammer, who's head of all the black people. Which I think he's just saying is a complete joke. But then if you watch Spring Breakers, you've got Alien, who's in charge of the white girls, and then Gucci Mane, whatever his character's called, in charge of all the black people. There's something being said about race there, but it seemed like an idea that he's been holding on to for a long time. Similar, and like definitely in Beach Bum, you like the more I was thinking about it, it's like you're supposed to be laughing at the scene where Moondog is having sex with his wife while she's getting her toenails done. But then the toenails are being done by an Asian woman, which I think is, quite typical of these nail salons I've heard. So it's almost like this is what's going on in America, that people are just horribly indulging in luxury in front of the faces of other races.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would pick up, well, in The Beach Bum, I'd say it's more kind of a class divide situation too than necessarily race, even though, especially in America, you can't really talk about division of class without race being at least part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like, because there is a moment in The Beach Bum where he's lost everything, and then he galvanizes or gets all the local bums under this bridge to have a parade with him back to his mansion to essentially just destroy it. So
yeah,
he's he's kind of leading the street into this kind of locked gate. The gate is locked, and he's like, I have the keys to the gate. He pushes it. It does the little code. All the bums scream in triumph when it opens. They destroy it, and then that's when the only moment of reality in the movie of him actually is because he did that, because now he's in trouble. Now the law is coming to actually step in and make him or try to make him straighten up, which doesn't work, like the whole rehab plot in that movie, which is what a normal movie would be about. Oh, this guy has to get his life together. This movie's not. Beach Bum wasn't interested in that. They're like, no, he can show up to rehab, decide it's not for him, and then continue on with his life. He'll just wear dresses for the rest of the movie because that's apparently a good.
The thing is, like, that's the point in the film where I knew, okay, this is not a regularly plotted film, because at first I thought, oh, okay, this is a film about how his rich wife dies and he has to cope with it. Oh no, this is a film about how he has to go to rehab and deal with that. Oh no, this is okay. I don't know what this film is about. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and then they stick the Martin Lawrence scene in the middle of it where where he's the boat captain, which is, I don't know how to read that at all. It's just, to me, when I saw that in the theater last year, I was like falling out of my chair laughing at that scene, because I'm like, wait, all this guy cares about is dolphins, and he doesn't know the difference between a dolphin and a shark. Like, just like, it was really like a scene stealing performance, Martin Lawrence in that. I'm like, where's this guy been? He's hilarious.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I was kind of thinking it almost works as a straightforward comedy if you wanted to read it like that. But I think there were just too many weird things happening on it. Like, it was about halfway through the film, I was just like, this film did not make its money back, did it? I don't know what it was I saw, but I was like, this is just too strange for most people. But so I think the way Harmony Korine writes, if he does write at all, is clearly without knowing how something is going to end up. And that's so apparent in the structure of his films, is like, he just goes, okay, so like the wife gets killed, so probably he'd do this, probably that would happen, probably this would happen. And because he doesn't know where the story ends up, seems to me, in the process of writing it, we as the audience have no idea where it's going as well. To the point where, like I said, I've been watching films, I watch them in like half-hour chunks, but they're all very Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, so you're like, I'll stop here, and I know what's going to happen, but I'll see how it happens. With this film, it's like, I have to see this through to the end. I've got no idea what's going to happen. And I know it will just, like, it will bring together the entire message of what the film was about, which it totally does.
Yeah, and it's probably part of that dream structure too, where the movies themselves are the piece. It's like a piece of classical music. You can't listen to the part of it. You have to sit there and listen to the whole thing to get the experience. Yeah. So it's. I mean, like I watched The Beach Bum last night, and I paused the movie towards the end to like go to the bathroom. And there was 15 minutes left, and I was like, oh, part of the spell got broken, because now I have to kind of reacclimate myself to the thought process that the movie has, kind of the hypnotic thought process or structure of this movie. I kind of broke it by stopping before it was time for the movie to end. It took a second to get into it.
Yeah, it's so rare in films, and it really shouldn't be. Like, ideally you would get that experience every time, but I can't drop films fast enough most of the time.
Yeah, because a lot of filmmakers are going to just kind of follow the structure, which is, that's fine. In fact, there's a reason why things are constructed the way they are. It's because it's easy to follow, and we like to be told variations of the same story in the way that it works. That's why there's fairy tales and stuff. They're all different, but they're all the same. Kind of. And when something comes along that kind of breaks the mold, that's what makes it so special. If every movie was a Harmony Korine movie, I don't know if movies would be as popular as they are.
Yeah.
And then when you get someone who kind of approaches movie making as, I'm a visual storyteller, and the entire language of the film is through what you see, and not and what you feel because of what you're seeing, and not necessarily what the characters are saying or the way that they need to interact with each other, or the kind of typical things, the arc of their story, the typical things movies are about. Yeah, like, so it's why his films are are special, and why these other filmmakers we were mentioning too are, I think, special because
Mhm.
they can kind of invert the expectations that every other movie set up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That is, I think, an excellent place to end our chat as well, which was like so successful. Loved it.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and there's so many places we could have gone to, especially once we started getting off Harmony Korine. I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
like so many filmmakers and all this other shit I want to talk about. But yeah, I think this was great.
We could do it as we could totally do a series. You can pick somebody next time, and we can have another chat if you
Yeah,
feel
dude, I love talking about movies. It's one of my favorite things. So,
awesome. Please tell me about like what's going on with you in writing and what we should be looking for.
oh, okay. I don't I don't have any new releases or anything coming up, but let's see what's going on. I just had a audiobook for my book I will rot without you. So I kind of uh I didn't record it myself. I'm not I'm not a good voice actor, I don't think. So I had someone do it, but I kind of produced the whole thing myself. So it was a cool process where I got to pick the person and then work with them, and so it turned out really kind of fun. Um, so yeah,
Cool.
if people want to check that out, and let's see the other thing. Let's see. I have a recurring comedy article or column in Unnerving magazine, and it's basically based off of movies. It's called Danger's Failed Film Pitches. So they're all based off of me bumping into filmmakers and then pitching terrible movies to them, which aren't ever going to be produced. So I did it in the last issue of Unnerving, which was number 12. Um, I pitched to Michael Bay. I pitched a big budget action movie based off of Tic Tac Toe. And I pitched a United Mummy cinematic universe to Tom Cruise, where he can kind of combine his stupid mummy movie with the Brendan Fraser ones, and it's just a bunch of nonsense. And I'm working on the columns for the next issue, number 13, which will be upcoming. So.
Excellent. So, if you are a reader, writer, any kind of creative, and you want to be on the show, or if you want to tell me anything about the show, you can do so using losingtheplotpodcast-at-gmail-dot-com. What did you think of this episode style? Is this something you want to listen to in future? Any particular director that you enjoy? Do you want to come on the show and talk to me about a director? Whatever it is, losingtheplotpodcast-at-gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. But that's all for me for this episode, so until next time, bye-bye.